We'll talk about the effects of biodiversity loss as the earlier portions I've explained in my previous class of biodiversity. So this is the second class of biodiversity where I would talk about the effects and causes of biodiversity loss. So the effects of biodiversity loss, the first that is the what are the effects? Okay, so number one, what is the effect is if there is a loss in biodiversity, it would lead to decline in plant production. Okay, so obviously see if there is a loss in diversity means what, that plants are dying, reducing, so there will be a decline in plant production. So whatever materials we get from the plants, those things we will not get, so there will be a decline. Number two is lowered resistance to environmental perturbations, like the drought, all these things. So when there is a loss in plants and animals, so what will happen is that whatever natural hazards are happening in environment, there will be a lower resistance. Okay, so lowered resistance. Okay, number three is increased variability in plant productivity and water use, pest and disease cycle. That means what, when there is a loss, what will happen is that the variation will increase. Okay, in plant, like the productivity will not be similar, there will be a variation. Also the water use, okay, it will be different. Okay, like more water may be used or less water may be used. Then also there will be a change in the disease cycles. Okay, so these are some of the effects of biodiversity losses, the increased variability. Okay, I'm just giving in short forms as my pen is showing a bit problem. So next is the causes. Okay, next we'll come to the causes. So what are the causes of biodiversity loss? Okay, so what are the causes? So the causes are, number one, okay, so we can just like there's a term known as the evil quartet. Okay, evil quartet, so we can describe the causes on the basis of the evil quartet. Okay, so evil quartet, I don't know what happened to this pen. So evil quartet. Okay, so what is coming on this evil quartet? Number one is fragment, habitat loss and fragmentation. Okay, number one is habitat loss. So what is happening out here is that sometimes you might have heard that trees are cut and forests are cleared. Okay, so what is happening is that, like, what is happening is that during those times also sometimes the habitats are they are fragmented, or you can say they are broken into small fragments. Okay, so when that happens, when that happens, then obviously there is a loss in the diversity of plants and animals. This is a very important point of all the other points. This habitat loss and fragmentation. Okay, so number two out here is over exploitation. See, I need not write, but I'm just giving it so that it'll be easy for you to remember. Okay, over exploitation. So what happens out here is that it's like we are all dependent on nature, right, for food and shelter. But what happens sometimes when people become greedy, what happens is that we over exploit the resources of the nature. So that may also lead to the loss in biodiversity. Okay, number three is alien species invasion. So what is alien species invasion out here is that sometimes when another species is invades to the in the suppose in a region where there's a niche, when there's a niche of a particular species, when an alien species is invading that region, then it also leads to the loss of biodiversity. So alien species invasion. Okay, one example out here is the Nile perch. Okay, when it was introduced in Lake Victoria, Then also there was a loss in diversity of the cichlid fish. Okay. The fourth one is out here, co-extinction. Co-extinction. So what happens out here is that, you know, sometimes what happens, a plant or animal, or you can say any one species is dependent on the other species, or it is associated with another species. So when that species becomes extinct, what happens, gradually this other species that are associated with it also becomes extinct. So therefore it leads to co-extinction. Again, this will also lead to a loss in biodiversity. So these are the four points, like the four causes of loss in biodiversity. Okay, so now next part that is very very important is that how do we conserve it, how do we do conservation. Okay, so this is a very important part. Okay, so how do we conserve the biodiversity. Okay, so like right now, why do we need to, first let's talk about why do we need to conserve it. Okay, so why do we need to conserve this biodiversity? So number one, okay, now there it can be divided into three parts. One is the narrowly utilitarian, second is broadly utilitarian, and third is the ethical. Okay, so this is a narrowly utilitarian. So out what happens is that human beings, we derive many types of medicines, economic benefits, food, industrial production and all from this this forest, this species, okay, plants, animals and all. So what happens is that if we continuously keep on using this resource, what will happen, it will lead to the loss in biodiversity or the extinction. Okay, so if we conserve this biodiversity, it will lead to the resources increase. Okay, and if the resources are increasing, then it will lead to the nations which are having a lot of biodiversity, since they are producing many raw materials and other products, so it will lead to economic benefits. Okay, so this is one reason for the narrowly utilitarian part. Second comes the broadly utilitarian part. Out here we can talk about the Amazon forest. As we know that Amazon forest is helping us with oxygen. It provides 20% of the oxygen. Also, if we talk about another process such as the pollination process. Okay, so there are some services that is provided by the nature, by the ecosystem. So when we conserve biodiversity, then these type of processes, this type of services are also conserved. Third is the ethical part. Ethical is being a living being, it's a moral duty. Okay, it's a moral duty to care for other living beings. Okay, so that it can be passed on to our future generation. Okay, if we keep the resources in a good order, then it can be passed to the next generation. Also we have a moral duty towards the other living beings. Okay, so this is one other reason why we should conserve the biodiversity. These are the three reasons. Now next part is how. Okay, next part is how to conserve the biodiversity. Okay, number one is out here. Again, there are two parts: in situ, and the other is ex situ. Okay, so in situ is also known as the on-site conservation, and ex situ is the off-site conservation. Okay, so in situ what happens is that we talk about the entire ecosystem. Okay, the whole ecosystem. So when we conserve the whole ecosystem, so automatically what happens, the biodiversity that is present in the whole ecosystem is also conserved. Okay, the whole ecosystem. Okay, now example, if we conserve the entire forest, So in that forest, whatever plants and species are there, automatically they are also conserved. Okay. The other process approach is ex situ. So ex situ means out here, off site. Okay, it means off site. So what happens out here is that here only the animal or the plant that are endangered, they are conserved. Okay, animal or plant, so they are conserved. Why? Because they either, if they are endangered or threatened, then they are protected against the extinction. So this is the two approaches that are used for conservation of biodiversity. Now if we come to the in situ portion, okay, so in situ, like there are 34 biodiversity hotspots, okay, which are present for the conservation of biodiversity. Now there is a term known as endemism. Okay, term known as endemism. So what is endemism? Again, remember the term. So outer this means there are some species which are confined to a specific region. So they are known as this is known as endemism. Okay. So in India there are, this is also again very important, please remember this. In India there are 14 biosphere reserves. Okay, 14 biosphere reserves. Then there are 90 national parks, and there are 448 wildlife sanctuaries. Okay, please remember this is important for the question. And also there are some sacred groves. Okay, there are some sacred groves. So one example of sacred groves out here is the Khasi and Jaintia hills in Meghalaya. Okay, then we are talking, then there is also Aravalli hills in Rajasthan. Then there is the Western Ghat regions in Karnataka and Maharashtra. Okay, also there is the Sargia, Chanda and Bastar in MP. So this is very important out here. This can come, sometimes there are some questions where they will ask you to match the correct ones. So remember Khasi and Jaintia hills in Meghalaya. Okay, Khasi and Jaintia hills in Meghalaya. Aravalli hills in Rajasthan. Okay, remember these things. Western Ghat regions, this is in Karnataka and Maharashtra, and Sargia, Chanda and Bastar, this is in Madhya Pradesh. Okay, so this is very important, remember this. And in ex situ, when we talk about ex situ, then we are talking about zoological parks, botanical gardens, wildlife safari parks. These are all coming under ex situ. Okay, so this is one, zoological parks, botanical gardens and wildlife safari parks. Okay, wildlife safari parks. Number two out here is we talk about the gametes. So there are some threatened species. Okay, so what happens is, since they are threatened species, so we are preserving the gametes, okay, in a viable and fertile condition for longer periods. This is done by the process known as cryopreservation. Okay, so this is number one, another way of conservation, gametes preservation. Number three is the fertilization of egg. Okay, in vitro fertilization. So in vitro fertilization of eggs. Okay, also the propagation of plants. Okay, propagation of plants using tissue culture methods. Okay, propagation of plants using tissue culture methods. Last one is seed banks. Okay, seed banks. So what happens is, there are some seeds. Okay, so like there are some plants which are commercially important. So when we conserve those, when we preserve those seeds of the different, I remember I told you about the different genetic strains. So when we are preserving the genetics, seeds of genetic strains in seed banks, this is also one approach of ex situ biodiversity conservation. Okay, so this is all about the biodiversity conservation. I hope you have liked the class and you have learned something from the class. So if you have any doubts, you can comment. And you can also tell me, like if you need like any topic which you have not understood, you can tell me. So in my other classes we will discuss some important questions that can come for the medical examinations. Okay, so one more thing I would like to tell you about the Amazon. As you know that Amazon is known as the lungs of planet. This is also another question which can come, that like Amazon is also known as the lungs of planet. Okay, so here I'm ending my class of biodiversity conservation. Thank you so much.